Thanks for joining, and thanks for being early. We know we're almost at lunch, so we'll try to keep you awake. And after this, you got lunch, so we can all be happy. So we're gonna discuss today a full approach to cover the Alfresco lifecycle, Alfresco project lifecycle. I think many of you are partners, community members, customers, and you'll see today how we have finally put together, I think, an end-to-end sort of solution for you guys to highly automate, increase productivity, and be safe in terms of developing and deploying a Alfresco application in arbitrarily complex architectures. So before we go on, actually, I'll just go back to my previous slide. Just a quick introduction. Gabriele Columbro. I'm now in Alfresco for 5 years and 2 years as a partner. I used to be a consultant. I'm now managing a global team, which is sort of the last year of support, and we work a lot with engineering. You might know me for my contribution to the Alfresco SDK, and maybe you want to introduce yourself?
Hi everyone, I'm Maurizio Pillitu. I'm an Alfresco consultant working for Alfresco for almost 3 years and playing around with provisioning and deployment, contributing to the Alfresco SDK.
So while normally we are, Gab and Mao, for today we have a much easier sort of name pattern. So for today I'll be Dev.
And I'll be Ops.
So that's familiar. I guess you guys are familiar with the concept of DevOps. So let's just get started. Again, I've been presenting for a few years now at Summit all the sort of achievements and improvements that, and investments that we put in the sort of developer ergonomics, developer experience in terms of providing, a very slick, rapid, high quality development experience. And I think, I see some, long-time Alfrescan faces in here, and I think, those of you who have been working for 4 or 5 years with the platform know how, hopefully the experience for developers has improved. So it really all started from, our love for developers, and Alfresco is a platform. Most of you do customization, so it's really fundamental that, having such a, I think, good open platform, we provide, best of breed, world-class developer experience. So I actually stole that logo to Facebook, so hopefully they didn't, I'm not going to be sued, but, over the years, and especially in the last, 2 or 3 years, we have seen how, the world of development and the world of operations have more and more converged into this, concept of DevOps. And, that obviously is due to the introduction of cloud systems and certainly, how the development methodology have more and more, sort of needed the feedback that come from operations. And this sort of closed circle has now, you can't just think about development without sort of thinking what is your deployment strategy and what is sort of the feedback circle that you are going to get from your application in production, whether that's deployed on premise or on cloud. So that's how, you hear this word today a few times, the word lifecycle, the word, project lifecycle. Well, that is how I envision in sort of the modern days, a full sort of infinite project lifecycle that starts from obviously building your code, planning, testing it, but then releasing, deploying, having the system in operations, and making sure that you have a strong feedback cycle from how your system is actually running in production by the means of monitoring or user feedback or any kind of feedback, and feed that back into the next iteration of your development. Again, this has been sort of best practice of iterative development since a few years now, but I think that the concept of, with the collision and sort of more and more overlaps between developer and operations into, in many cases, single figure of DevOps, has certainly strengthened this sort of continuous infinite life cycle, if you want. So in addition to that, we're seeing newer and newer deployment models in the last couple of years. We started from software as a service. We are seeing blossoming platform as a service that provides you not only sort of production development environment, but also sort of provides you, in some cases, even free hosting for the whole life cycle. So to build continuous integration, continuous delivery, even hosting your system. So again, I think what we're trying to say here is that Alfresco, being a modern framework, deployable on-premise, on the cloud, and with many potential sort of provisioning options, need to provide a lifecycle that is not only about development. And that's why we have invited our kind friend Ops to actually talk us about the second part of the lifecycle. How can you actually deploy your applications in a safe, controlled way? I think so. Just to wrap up, the two concepts that we really wanted to sort of provide an all-encompassing approach for, where not only development, not only deployment, but also making sure that that will work in the cloud world, and it would be something that both developer, operation, and potentially DevOps could actually use. Obviously, as you can see, there are so many technologies. Pretty much once every week, we hear about a new technology around either provisioning or deployment of on-premise versus cloud instances. So what we really wanted to do is, kind of provide you a framework of how you can leverage these technologies in the Alfresco context. So just to kind of give you a few mission statement points, a few vision points, we obviously start from the developer side of things, and we'll see it hopefully in a few slides and in my demo, how with the latest improvements of our SDK, we're really aiming to deliver through the rapid development experience that allows you, a full IDE integration, but not bound, you don't need an IDE. You want to integrate with an IDE because you want to provide, rapid development features, but you don't need to be dependent on an IDE because you want to, run your projects in continuous integration, have continuous delivery environments, have automated sort of quality environment in which you test, all the aspects of your application. So I don't want to go back really to old proprietary products development when you needed a full IDE and probably 5 servers to actually run your application. The second point is quality. And if I took my open source hat off and put my support hat on, for me it's really fundamental to enable high quality development. Whether that's community partners or customers, we need to sort of give you weapons to deliver high quality software so that I don't really have to do so much work in support. Obviously, once the development is completed, and in general, across the whole life cycle, we want to reach high automation. I think Alfresco, being a very modern framework, it's really open to full automation of your development, your release, and your provisioning, and ultimately deployment in arbitrarily complex architectures. So as you can see, that's our fourth point. So really, across the technologies and the presentation that you'll see today, these are sort of the 4 takeaways that we would like you to go out with. And I think this is really the first time that we have a full story from beginning to end of a project life cycle. So talking about the project life cycle, this is a 4-point plan, which we are very passionate about South Park, and that's a really minimal plan for how to run a successful startup, no matter what you're doing. Startup, cash in, sell out, bro down. Jokes apart, the real life cycle of an Alfresco project. And we all know that it can get much more complex than this. So I'm presenting here a very simplified model that would sort of fit in the 50 minutes time slot that we have. And let's sort of focus on a single iteration. So we're not going to look at the full infinite life cycle, but let's consider sort of a single iteration of this life cycle, in which we obviously have the project inception, where we're going to create the project. You got the requirements. The business is asking you to deliver this project. Let's start it up. What is the best way to start up a project on Alfresco? Once that you have your project created, you have a development environment set up, you want to start developing. And developing, entails testing, entails packaging, entails, compiling, looking at the Alfresco sources, debugging. Once we've done that, I think that's a fundamental point that sometimes, again, I have seen things in 5 years in customer success, and certainly the concept of release and distribution is one of those concepts that is not always sort of followed. Just to be clear, I've seen so many people manually changing things in production, sort of not really taking care of tracking what those changes are, and again, as a support person, that gets a little old. So when I mean release and distribution, it's not only packaging and delivering your software out there. And obviously one of the main use cases is then taking that software and provisioning and deploying it into production or into other environments. But it's also potentially downstream usage, meaning if you have a module, a jar, or an amp that other projects need to use. So it's not really the pure runtime deployment of what we're producing, but it's also, I think, that's the key value of a release process, to make sure that the software is out there available for downstream usage. Can we lower the volume? Thank you. So as far as today's presentation goes, I'll be covering the first 3 phases of this life cycle, and we'll see a demo. And our friend Ops here is obviously going to explain you all the work that is done on the deployment and provisioning side of things. So before we move into sort of the demo, just a sort of a technology introduction here. I'm going to be talking and presenting about the Alfresco SDK 2.0. This is an SDK based on Maven, and as you can see, we dropped the Maven sort of prefix because this is now the standard Alfresco SDK. Therefore, no point having redundant naming there. And Mau is going to present the brand new Alfresco Boxes project, which is a provisioning deployment framework that I think you guys are going to like. And we'll have a real-life project that will basically go through these 4 phases. Yeah. So before we really go into the sort of SDK side of things, I just want to make sure, again, that we underline the importance of the concept of release, because this is really the way that dev and ops talk. Obviously, we could talk Italian in this case, but the role of a repository where a stable release lives, that becomes really the point of contact between dev and ops, in case, obviously, you don't have a DevOps that pretty much will do all the same. But again, make sure that we really are leveraging more and more the Alfresco artifacts repository to deploy and provide to you releases, again, downstream usage of our software. Or you probably will need to set up your own corporate repository if you're having internal releases. So let's move into the interesting bit, which is mine, obviously. So the Alfresco SDK 2.0, and I'll give you a little bit of history there, but is a 100% community-driven effort. I have been sort of leading this from a community standpoint, but also from an Alfresco standpoint. But really the idea behind the SDK is that this has to be a community project so that both community, partner, customers, and everyone can really sort of contribute and bring us back their development experience. And we could then certainly sort of put the Alfresco perspective in terms of support, alignment with our roadmap, and sort of future proof of a certain contribution. So really, that's, I think, one of the best examples of collaboration. And, for example, in the hackathon yesterday, we had 10 people working on it, and we had all sort of contributions coming from different sides. So that's really, I think, a good example of how, the community can add value. Now, a couple of Maven updates before we go in the SDK discussion. As you know, the satellite Maven has just entered the Mars orbit. And as our beloved Peter Monk said, the first order of business is to download the internet. Now, this is actually, jokes apart, I'd love for you to follow the demo on your laptops, but I would maybe suggest that you do it just after the presentation, otherwise we might clog the internet, yeah? So, just a quick tip there. So, again, before going in the SDK, couple of points on what we've done with Alfresco, what's going on in the Alfresco Maven sphere. Well, first of all, as you might know, thanks to that guy down there on the left, our release manager, Samuel, we are now fully building Alfresco with Maven. And again, this is not a purely technology thing. It is mostly around the fact that we now have a clear repository, a clear set of artifacts that you can go there, search, browse, sort of self-provisioning and uniquely identifiable. So that's really, by itself, something that, it should allow a lot of automation from your side in terms of installing, deploying, and provisioning, and certainly in terms of development. This has certainly driven a whole new level of productivity in the Alfresco SDK. We have released a few beta versions of the Alfresco SDK 2.0. This is compatible with 5.0a. We have been working at the hackathon yesterday to get it compatible with the recently released Community 5.0b. We are planning to do a 2.0.0 final when Alfresco 5.0 Enterprise is going to be out, so that we make sure that, if you want to upgrade to 5.0, as soon as that gets out, you have a full-blown SDK to work on it. We actually work to make this compatible with Alfresco 4.2. It's not yet in there, but we are working sort of to get all the goodies that I'm going to present today, sort of backward compatible for you guys to work against 4.2, as we know that 4.2 is going to be still there, especially in the enterprise world, for a while. So, as I said, we removed the Maven sort of name from the Alfresco SDK because we actually have deprecated the old sort of Eclipse-bound Ant-based SDK. So this is now the standard supported SDK for Alfresco. And we have pages in the Alfresco docs where you can easily see the compatibility metrics between SDK versions, Alfresco versions, what's compatible, what's supported, yeah? Now, I'm not going to spend too much on this slide, but I just wanted to let you know that, again, when I said that we finally have an all-encompassing story from inception to deployment, well, it took a while, I've been working on the SDK now for about 6 years, and across different namings and versions and sort of iterations, we are finally, I think, to the level of maturity that you guys need and that you guys deserve to actually, be quick and high quality in developing your Alfresco customization. So let's go a little bit more, on the practical side of things. And as we head to the demo, these are some, but not all, of the key sort of killer features of the Alfresco 2.0 SDK. I think clearly the most important one is Alfresco sort of support for rapid application development and IDE integration. Again, not dependent, but fully and highly integrated with IDEs, sort of like Eclipse, IDE, and I've heard about some testing, successful testing with NetBeans as well. So what do I mean by rapid application development? Well, in this case, we will see that the new SDK provides full support for Java code reloading, JavaScript code reloading, all of your resources. So it's really, without any need for restarting your application or restarting even the Tomcat context. This is fully sort of integrated in the way you work in your IDE. And I hope to get a couple of wows when we'll demo that in a couple of minutes. So as I said, this works out of the box with Eclipse and IDEA. And I think this is certainly where we have put sort of the most effort and sort of the main differentiators for previous features. Our community has also contributed a share AMP archetype. As you know, we used to have just a repository AMP archetype and sort of an all-in-one project that shows you the full power of the Alfresco SDK. We now have also a pre-defined project template for quick starting Alfresco share development, with a lot of samples in there, and even with the new iCow widget. iCow is the, as you might know, share framework for sort of UI in 5.0. So what's reloaded, actually? How hot is hot? We have things like Java code, as I said, JavaScript and free marker templates, web resources and JSP. Really, the only things that are not reloaded are Spring context and properties files. Yeah? Again, I don't think this is a major problem, because typically the amount of changes that are done in your Java code or in your resources or in your web script are infinitely higher than the changes in terms of Spring beans or properties file. We're actually looking into sort of getting this sorted as well, and potentially you might try to use JRebel, proprietary frameworks like JRebel. But the good thing of the SDK, as I said, is 100% open source, and the hot reloading is provided by a library called JRebel, Spring Loaded, which is a fully free project from Spring. It's just a simple agent in your JVM. We got plenty of other features. I'm not going to go through all of them, because again, we've seen a huge contribution momentum on the SDK, but our engineers have contributed support for Selenium testing, for integration and regression testing. We have remote JUnit integration, i.e. you can run the Alfresco sort of integration tests, running the whole Alfresco context that typically can take about a minute in a matter of seconds or even milliseconds. So that's, I think, a really important feature to enable test-driven development. Again, I think the main driver is quality here, and so we also integrated a so-called Alfresco technical validation tool that basically validates your customizations against Alfresco best practices. Once again, that allows you to develop high quality and high longevity extensions of Alfresco. We have support for records management, and I think from a community standpoint, first of all, we are on Maven Central. Those of you who work with Maven know that this means that pretty much any Maven developer in the world can now, with a simple command, get access to these project templates and start developing with Alfresco with little or no configuration. And we moved to GitHub. I think this was, a huge move, because we have really fostered collaboration, pull requests. Again, I really sort of suggest you to take a look at it and fork us. As I said, we are not yet at the 2.0.0 final version. The latest release on Maven Central is 2.0.0 Beta 4. We are going to wait for Enterprise 5.0 to actually release the final version of the SDK. Now here a couple of pointers. I'm just going to quickly skip to it. This is the documentation on the Alfresco docs. So these are supported features. This is more the sort of developer-oriented documentation is the Maven side. So you can go and check out, if you are extending your build, if you need to do something more than the basic SDK functionalities, that's where you want to look at. And these are some pointers for contribution. Really, we're seeing a huge momentum. So jump on the train, yeah? Now, here we are with the demo. So, as you know, we are a couple of Italian folks here. And so, the use case we've chosen is a chain of restaurant called Fettuccine Alfresco. Not to be confused with Fettuccine Alfredo, which, by the way, in Italy does not exist. We do not have Fettuccine Alfredo, just for information. But anyway, so what are we going to do here is just simulate, we got requirements from the business. Requirements are pretty simple to fit in a 50 minutes presentation. So, we want to integrate with an external sort of recipe service and provide the sort of recipe of the day dashlet for our employees to be creative in their cooking and sort of get a new idea every day when it comes to cooking. We're pretty requiring in our country. So from a non-functional deployment, and that's certainly something that will certainly be covered mostly by Mao. We need a VM deployment strategy, we need continuous delivery, and we want to have high availability. Yeah? So this is sort of the use case that we're going to present today. And what I'm going to do is first show you a little bit of rapid development features of the SDK. I'm sorry we can't do the whole full-blown demo, but as Maurizio said, we can sort of chat later at the expert bar. I'll be there, so feel free to come. And Maurizio will then show how to deploy the product of my development in an arbitrarily complex architecture. Yeah? So the first thing I'm going to do is actually show you, if you remember those 4 phases, I want to start with inception. So my business told me to create a new project. This is the way I do it. I have a standard Eclipse Luna, empty. The latest version of Eclipse ships with the Maven plugin, so you don't need external plugin installation. You can just go here. You can do new Maven project. Next. What I've done here is actually adding a so-called archetype catalog. This is just the Maven Central standard archetype catalog. So, a list of project templates. So I've added this in my Eclipse. This is really just adding a URL. And at that point, directly in Eclipse, I can just yeah, it's on, but it went off. It's out of battery. Okay. So, I need to type, so no, it's fine. So if you can hear me.
To see you this way.
Thank you. So as you can see, if you filter for Alfresco, you're just gonna see 3 projects available, 3 project templates there. Okay, so you got an AMP archetype, which allows you to create a single AMP Alfresco module package for the repository side of things. Yeah, okay. And then a share AMP archetype, which actually allows you to create the very same thing, but for share, so an extension of Alfresco share. Now, for the sake of today's presentation, what we'll do is just create an all-in-one project, which allows you to, this is getting ridiculous, which allows you to really see the full power of the SDK and the full power of Alfresco. So it can be used certainly for demo purposes, but also if you're starting sort of a project that encompasses all the features of Alfresco, so repository, share, Solar. Yeah. So I'm gonna just go on and create this. So you gotta give it a group ID, which is just, as you know, a sort of general category for your project. And then an artifact ID. Yeah? So we're just creating these 2. All the other properties are pre-populated. As you can see, it is pre-configured with 50A. As soon as it's working, we'll default to 50B. Just hit finish. And as you can see, we got the parent project created, sort of an aggregator that puts together all the sub-projects, and then a repository AMP, a share AMP, a repository aggregator that would basically take this AMP and install in the repository WAR, a share amp, a share war that will take the share amp and install it onto the share war. A Solar project, which obviously customizes and runs Solar, and a runner that takes the 3 wars, pulls them up, and potentially even runs tests against them, or Selenium test against them. Pretty much whatever you want to do in a fully. The good thing is that the all-in-one allows you to run everything embedded without, any external prerequisites. No Tomcat, no database. It's all in your IDE, okay? And what I want to show you first is, in fact, run.sh file, which I've put there mostly for. Jesus. Just give me a second. It's very simple, so it shouldn't be so complex. So this run.sh is really a very simple bash script that for the less Maven savvy of you guys could just be used. Create the project and run the run.sh. This is going to basically set up the whole environment, including downloaded the spring-loaded file that is needed for hot reloading of your Java code, and making sure that if you have it instead, we'll use it as a Java agent when it runs your Maven build so that it can provide the hot reloading features. Yeah? Now, the interesting bit is that if you also change this guy from Maven to Maven debug as any Maven command, that will also start a remote debug session, wait for you to connect from Eclipse, and you're doing basically remote debugging. So not only hot reloading, not only unit testing as we'll see, but also easy debugging of your Alfresco application, the full stack. Yeah? Now, since we are a bit short on time, and even shorter right now, I actually have the same sort of project structure already created in another workspace and already running. So I already called the run.sh command that has, packaged the whole thing and run Alfresco. Yeah, so I'm just going to switch workspace here. Coming up. And here is our Fettuccine Alfresco project. Same structure. As you can see, there are very simple customizations here. So on the repository side, we have a simple data object that represents a recipe. We have an interface for a recipe service that gives me the recipe of the day. A very simple customization. A big oven recipe service that connects to this big oven API that retrieves recipes remotely via a key, and a web script, a data web script that will be called by share to actually produce the data information that we require. On the shared side, very simply, we have a simple dashlet that does nothing else than calling the repository, retrieving data, and presenting it. So very simple, yeah? I'll show that to you in a second. So as you can see, here we have our dashlet, which basically every time that I refresh gives me a new and different recipe, so that I'm not faking it. Now you know. And what I want to show you is how, for example, I can just go here on my share side of things and say, instead of recipe instructions, I can just say bogus, just save, not run anything, go here, and there's the bogus. Now, this was a JavaScript, so you might not be really that much impressed. But if we go on the repo side, and for example, let's say we will change the, instead of get title here, we can just say Gab. Yeah? This is a Java web script that is returning our service there. So as you can see here, our title has changed. I have not run any command. I have not done anything. Wow, is what you mean. So one last thing before I hand it to Mao, because obviously I'm running out of time. Once that we have developed this, and there are many more features there, the unit testing, there's integration testing, and again, come to me if you want to have a quick demo of how this works, or you can attend the Maven training like we have delivered yesterday. I just want to show you that once I've done this, I've done the inception, I've done the development, really my next step is a release. And in Maven, this is the command to do a release. Nothing else. That will tag your code, it will release it with a specified version in your Maven repository so that our friend Ops can consume it. And that would be it.
Eventually consumed.
So let's pass the ball to our Ops sort of friend.
Hello.
Wait a second.
So, thank you, Gab. I mean, you were not late at all. It's like 5 minutes left. So, I'm really excited to present this work. It's I gave it a really generic name. It's called Alfresco boxes because whatever a box means, it's really personal. What I'm going to present you today is something not supported by Alfresco. It's not a replacement of the Alfresco installer. However, if you experience in your provisioning and deployment a lot of customizations on top of what you do with the Alfresco installer, maybe Alfresco boxes is a good project to check out. It's still on an experimental phase. There are few customers trying it out. So it's still on an early stage. So what is a box anyway, an Alfresco box anyway? There are different attributes, different components of a box, depending on the type of the box that you want to deliver, depending on the container where it runs, and actually these two characteristics are well connected. And the purpose, I mean, you may want to have one box for bulk uploading, another box for share, another box for an all-in-one installation. It really depends on your architecture, on your choice. So what we looked for was a generic approach. We wanted to find technologies to map this strategy. We want to start from an existing image, a known image, a certified image. So it's no, I mean, this is an Ubuntu released image, an LTS, something we can rely upon. We want to be compatible with local virtualization tool and with cloud virtualization tool. And then the provisioning in the middle, the process in the middle, which actually gets us to the latest stage of a closed box, is something that should be reusable, configurable, modular, extensible, all characteristics for something that should be consistent, should be stable. Okay, so I thought that as Alfresco consultant, as a knowledgeable person in Alfresco, I could come up with this set of provisioning tools. And the end result is something that we really want to be production ready. We don't want to play with boxes. We want to have one process to deliver the end result. And of course, one of the main requirements for production ready and scalable architecture is that the boxes are cluster ready. So let's focus first on the part in the middle, the provisioning. I've chosen Chef as a technology, not religious about tools, but I think that Chef is a pretty good fit for our requirements. The characteristics of Chef Alfresco, which is, by the way, a project you can find on GitHub, is that it's component-based. You can pretty easily configure components of what you want to provision. Do you want to install MySQL? You will add the MySQL component, Tomcat, Transform, Repo, Solar, and Share, which basically map to the web application which compose the Alfresco architecture. We always wanted to be extensible in terms of Alfresco extensibility, which means AMP. We wanted to use the custom wars delivered by our friend Dev. So we had to implement within Chef Alfresco an extremely configurable approach. and also, in some way, feature-rich. We want to make sure that the creation and the patching, or the patching of Alfresco global properties is something that happens in a configurable way, yet not in a hacky way, right? So I don't want to uncompress and recompress WAR files. I want to have a consistent provisioning procedure. Also, Chef Alfresco relies on a third-party cookbook, which is called Artifact Deployer, implemented by me again, which actually allows you to fetch artifacts from different sources. You can fetch from your own URL. It's ready to be fetched from Maven repositories using the main coordinates. So there are really a lot of interesting features delivered by Chef Alfresco. The other technology that we involved to actually cover the horizontal part of this drawing, the one that we saw before. So Chef Alfresco will cover the part in the middle. We still need a technology that covers the horizontal part from end to end. And the name of this technology that I chose is called Packer. So just a link to the Chef Alfresco project. You are welcome to check it out, open issues, interact with the community-based project. This is an example of JSON-based configuration of Chef. It's really easy. You can ask actually, in this example, you are actually asking Chef to install a custom WAR for Alfresco. Exactly the same syntax that we're going to use to deliver the use case of Fettuccine Alfresco. I tried actually to put some good documentation there, and if I didn't manage to do it, please open issues. So, as we said, we need another technology that takes care of the end-to-end process. We found Packer to be an extremely interesting technology because it maps the concepts of provisioners and builders. So for each builder, you can start from an existing image, you can apply one or more provisioning logics, and you will get out the same, a ready-to-use image of the same nature of the source. So you can actually configure one Packer build to support multiple builders. So with the same logic, you can come out with an ISO, with a Docker image, rather than an EMEA that you can use on the marketplace. As you can see, the only provisioner that we use for right now is Chef Alfresco, but you are free to add your script files, Ansible, Puppet, Chef, whatever it is, Salt as well. So this is an example of Packer configuration that will configure the builders. In the example that in the Fettuccine example, we have actually two provisioners, one for building an EMEA, starting from an existing one, and one for building a VirtualBox, an ISO, using VirtualBox, starting from the URL, the ISO URL officially released by Ubuntu. This is the configuration of the provisioning. As you can see, again, like the previous snippet that we've seen, this is a consistent syntax. It actually allows you to define very easily which are the components, enable, disable features, something that is documented on the website, whether you want to start the services or not, something that, for example, for EMEAs and Docker, you may want to disable this. Actually, it's disabled by default. And as you can see, we are consuming the WAR files being generated by dev. Okay. This configuration is needed in order to allow Chef Alfresco to access the Maven repository, and this is the command that we run. We just need to install Packer, we run the command, we decide which are the builders that we include. By default, it will actually run them all. And we've got in the output Packer, whatever folder local to the project, you will get the ISO created. In case of AWS, it will automatically upload the EMEA depending on your secret key and token, basically. So starting from this step, unfortunately, I don't have time to show you the ISO. I want to show you something probably nicer. We want to do one step further. We want to virtualize. We want to run these boxes in a virtualized environment. So for this reason, we have investigated and used for this demo a virtualization environment called Docker, which is getting a lot of attention lately. One of the things that Docker allows you to do very easily, actually, you can always do it with ISO, is to create a hierarchy of images. So we started from an existing image, which is Ubuntu 12.04. Alfresco base delivers just Ruby and other specific technologies needed for Chef to run. Alfresco web base will deliver Java and Tomcat. Alfresco repo base will deliver third-party transformation tools like LibreOffice and PDF Box and others. And then we have Alfresco Only One Community, Alfresco Only One Enterprise, which are pretty self-explanatory. At the lower level, we have Alfresco repo, which contains, which actually extends repo base and installs the repo web application. That's it. It doesn't install share, it doesn't install Solar. It doesn't follow actually even the custom configurations. Alfresco share delivers an Alfresco repository and an Alfresco share web application, so that share can communicate locally to the repository, and the repository can actually participate to the cluster. Alfresco Solar will contain Alfresco repository and Alfresco Solar. Again, for share and Solar, we prefer to have local repositories to use local repositories as architectures. It's probably one choice that we made, but you could actually change the characteristics of your box. So what we have in front right now, this is an architecture. This is one of the architectures that I've used, installed to customers during my consulting activities. This is a real life example, right? So we see that we have one load balancer, actually currently configured with HA proxy and round robin, share 1 and share 2, one Solar index, then a bulk upload instance which only contains the repository and has the role actually of pushing data. And then we have two nodes, two images here, two containers actually, which are used for delivering a DNS server and in general to orchestrate the linking across the different boxes. So Gab, I think it's demo time. So we're gonna show you, we're gonna try to show you a Docker installation run. Okay, here we are. There you go. So I'm gonna step into my virtualized environment. Let's see if we have, for lucky, PS -A. Struggling. We're actually remote accessing my laptop, which is in the first row, but doesn't look like it wants to work. Too bad. Yeah. Vabbè, dai. Andiamo sull'overview. While Docker is thinking, we can actually get back to the slides. Faccio play, riparte da qua. What we wanted to build with, sì, vedi un po'. What we wanted to build with Alfresco boxes is actually not the way of doing provisioning. It's just a collection of examples. It works. Okay, cool. Now we're going to show it. A collection of examples using different provisioning strategies, but having something in common, which are actually the Chef Alfresco logic, which is something that I would like to consolidate. I'm working on continuous integration and other ways to improve the code quality. As you can see, the concepts stand on top of building images, running them maybe locally with the tools like Vagrant, or publishing them into public-private marketplaces with AWS or Docker registry. And then as soon as they're published, you can use them in order to spawn and to run your architecture. This is where orchestration is needed. And actually, sincerely, these Alfresco boxes is where, at the moment, I am investing. I am investing on orchestration, working with new technologies like Kubernetes or Terraform. I'm actually in the process of investigating these technologies. Let's see if we can show you the demo. So, yeah, they're exited. So, yeah, Vagrant closed the connection. So my machine went down. It was still his fault because he was late, right? So, but interesting thing here is that you can see the names of the containers that mapped the graph that we saw before. So this is one script that is committed, delivered into Alfresco boxes. You can check out the code. You can check out the code and see how this takes actually 120 seconds, something like this. So Docker is extremely fast. This is the Alfresco Boxes project. Again, it's a community effort, it's experimental, but I would really love to get your feedback, not only on features, also on documentation, most importantly. What is next? Orchestration and dashboarding. This is where Chef Alfresco and Alfresco boxes in general is lacking. I would like to have a dashboard where people can actually compile the JSON elements and run them remotely. I would like to integrate with more products and more images, show share-only, solar-only, community-driven images to share with the rest of the community. That's all for me. I'm back to Gab.
We are way out of time, so just to repeat the takeaways, just experience the SDK from a creation to release standpoint, and please provide feedback and enjoy the sort of flexible deployment strategy from Alfresco boxes. So we got you covered, really. I had to put that a little cat picture, seriously. Thank you so much. And